Welcome to Part of the System. Today I'm with Nigel Benton, the publisher of the Australasian Leisure Management, ALM, which he founded in 1996, over 24 years ago. It's the leading source of information for the leisure industry in Australia, New Zealand and Asia, covering aquatics, attractions, entertainment, events, fitness, parks, recreation, sport, tourism and venues. The printed Australasian Leisure Management magazine comes out 6 times a year and is read by over 11,500 professionals, while the news-based Australasian website, I think, is updated with the latest industry information every day and attracts, I think, about 100,000 unique visitors each month. In addition to this, Nigel's founded the Asian Leisure Business, which launched in July, and it's an online sister publication to the Australasian Leisure Management website, and which is Asia's first dedicated resource for the leisure industry. Obviously, Nigel's been in Australia for quite a while, but before emigrating, Nigel worked for the Institute Leisure Immediate Management, where he was the leisure management manager. So some fantastic experience there, and it's I'm really pleased to chat with Nigel today to look at the system from a media and journalistic lens. So, Nigel, how are you?
Fine, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Really looking forward to the chat. So Nigel, we'll get started. What does well-being mean to you?
Yeah, I guess I rather group well-being and wellness together, and I know that's one of those debates that can go on in a circular way. And also recall we first wrote the notion of wellness over 20 years ago. So in a rather simplistic way, I kind of view it as being the opposite of illness. The global medical and pharmaceutical professional is of huge profession, and the industry is of huge importance. And it's contributed to people living longer and improved quality of life, and over decades and centuries indeed. Advances in medical science have led to huge improvements in how we live. Some have included that diseases and ailments that killed people at early ages are now largely a thing of the past, and other threats to health have been minimized. But in the simplest of terms, that industry relies on people being sick and then sorting out the problem, a bit like you have a car that, you have a problem with your car, it's broken, you take it to a mechanic, it gets fixed. I view wellness being a significant part of what the leisure industry delivers. Wellness as being the opposite of that, and ensuring that through diet, activity, exercise, and the environment which we live in, and both the general environment in which we're in and those that we work in as well, helps avoid people getting ill, because people should be able to live as long as possible, but not only to live long, but to be able to enjoy their lives and not be afflicted by things that affect that. And I think wellness therefore has a huge role to play in improving that quality of life. There's some ailments obviously that can't be helped, but there's a lot of things that wellness orientated lifestyles can help alleviate or remove those risks, obesity, heart disease, lung and liver cancer, and so on. But there are lots of obstacles. Messages about good diet, not smoking, etc. Those messages are there, but through pressure and mass communication and things, there are so many influences out there that work against people being well and pursuing a sort of wellness-orientated lifestyle. And while I've got huge respect for the medical and pharmaceutical industries, they're somewhat complicit in that they deal with illness, and they don't necessarily accept what the wellness industry can do to alleviate illness. I know that's a sweeping statement, but I think it does apply. And I think for just at the present time, gyms, fitness centres, recreation facilities, sports centres in Victoria are currently closed down. Because of the state's coronavirus lockdown measures. Now, there's many reasons, and there's some people doing some extraordinary advocacy as to why those facilities should be open, so that people can get out there and be active. But the directives seem to come from Victoria's Chief Medical Officer that gyms should be part of the facilities and things that should remain closed. And I can't read his mind, I don't know what his private thoughts are, but I often see with those in those professions, the medical professions, the established medical institution, the idea that they kind of don't truly accept what facilities where people go to be active and well do. There is that sort of kind of traditional snobbery that sweaty types are not as serious as medical professionals who studied for a long time, and that's unfortunate. And I don't see it's an argument that can be won in the short term. It may not ever be one. You'll always have that sort of interprofessional snobbery that exists, but it's unfortunate that the benefits of wellness-oriented lifestyles and that facilities within this industry that can help people deliver that are kind of overlooked. Being specific to well-being, I suppose it does rather apply to mental well-being, about relationships, people realizing their potential, coping with stress, making a contribution to the community and the like. And where people suffer, their mental well-being is affected. That's unfortunate because it kind of works against those positive outcomes that you can get from a productive, healthy, active lifestyle. And I guess what we kind of fit in is trying to communicate the benefits and what is done well in the industry that contributes to that. So that's a huge answer, and I'm sorry for sort of bouncing around at different points, but it's trying to encapsulate what those functions are, and where facilities and programs that are delivered by people who work across the leisure industry contribute to that.
I like how you talked about the advocacy there and getting that positive message across around physical activity, and we'll get into that with some of my other questions. But I think when we open pubs before gyms, we're up against it. If the decision makers are going that way. But in terms of your personal well-being, then, so what do you do to look after that, Nigel?
Try to be active. I should be more active, but I swim, I walk, I cycle. I try to maintain a good diet without too much alcohol. It's a fairly simple mix that I think anyone should try to adhere to. And partly, actually, your question makes me reflect that actually up to the age of 16, for one reason or another, I was in hospital every year for an operation that was either an ailment or an accident. Right. And I'm very fortunate, and I wish there was some wood to touch, to not having been in hospital for a major operation or even a minor operation since. But those first 16 years were certainly unlucky, to say the least. So after that succession of accidents and conditions and things like that, I've been fortunate to be able to maintain a fairly healthy life balance since then. Bizarrely, though, at the age of, and this again, something your questions trigger, at the age of 15, I was diagnosed with a duodenal ulcer.
What's that?
Which kids aren't supposed to get. It was, at the time, I remember it being pigeonholed as something that sort of stressed businessmen got in their 50s. And that was, pretty nasty. So I labored with that for a number of years. And then in my early 20s, when doctors were talking about sort of having an operation to remove part of my gut and rewire how my gut functioned, I then set about transforming my diet. And the fortunate result of that is that I've never really had that reoccur. So that sort of digestive disorder since. So it's a thought-provoking question, because it takes me back to a time when things were kind of working against me, but through the number of lifestyle changes that I've made, and now several decades past, so they've almost forgotten that have helped me have the quality of life that I have to this day. And mentally, gosh, despite what I would call, and my wife certainly identifies as, a fairly deep level of cynicism about institutions and an attitude of not accepting the official line, which perhaps or is helpful in the work that I do, I have a very positive outlook on the world and the sort of on all the beauty that it contains.
Wow, that's why I love these conversations, because you never know about people, and most people have got a story to tell. So really well done on turning what was a negative there in your early days into such a positive, and you've got that positive outlook, and it seems like your health and well-being is in a good state now, and you've got you do lots of activity with the swimming and walking and cycling, etc. So that's really good to hear. And So we'll move on to the next question. Tell me about the role of the Australasian Leisure Management and in terms of the health and wellness centre system.
Okay, well,
Sorry.
yeah, it really applies in what we do across the board, in that we aim to sort of assemble and present information in the forms of news, news and features that is relevant to professionals working in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's covering all aspects of what we call the leisure industry. And it's not only relevant to people who are working in the industry, but those who have a stake in the industry, such as government, investors, educators, students, people who supply products and services to the industry and the like. So we aim to provide, in the way that any business-to-business magazine would, a range of information on announcements, developments, initiatives, funding, appointments, case studies, and so on, about what's happening in the industry. Ultimately can equip people to do their job better, and maybe be able to find their job easier because they're well informed about what's going on. And at all times, we aim to present the industry in the best possible light. I mean, it's a great industry report on it. There's a huge amount of positives to report on, as I sometimes say to people, we're not in the arms industry, we're not in the nuclear power industry or the tobacco industry, where you maybe have to question the scruples of those involved on occasion. But it's a great industry to be in. It's about fun. It's about helping people attain things and achieve things and improve their quality of life. So we aim to present all of that in the best possible way, and an informative and accessible way as well. But at the same time, we do scrutinise where that's warranted. We don't look for sensationalism, but we do scrutinise. Sadly, when things go wrong, mistakes are made. You often learn from your mistakes rather more than you learn in other circumstances. And there are occurrences where we do drill down into the industry and question what's going on, and report it as accurately and as in a way that's as beneficial to professionals as we can. And in terms of how we present it, I guess we've increasingly differentiated with what we produce online and in print. The printed magazine we've been running now for 24 years. That's quite a reminder.
It's a long time, Nigel.
It is. I sometimes say I wish one day I'll get a real job. The magazine is now largely features based. It's largely longer features, case studies, reports on a wide range of things that are going on in the industry.
Yeah.
Our news we put online on the website. We update that every day, and in the way that everyone goes to the internet to get their news these days. And newspaper circulation obviously is radically diminished compared to what was in previous decades. So our news is online, but keeping people engaged with lengthy news pieces, all publishers would tell you that's a challenge. So the print and the features-based magazine still works really well, in that people will stay engaged with a print feature longer than they will with an online news item. And when people are making decisions on multi-million dollar decisions on developments or equipment or kit or whatever it might be, you'd hope that they study those things in depth, and the type of information we can provide in a feature form in the magazine in a long form manner is different, and has a different scope and purpose to that which the news, which we're updating all the time on whatever developments may be on the day.
And is there any other media outlet like you in terms of providing that discourse for the leisure and health and recreation industry?
There are in other countries,
in Australasia,
Australia and New Zealand. No, there's not a single one. There's a few reasons for that, and it goes back really to when we founded the magazine, but it still applies now, in that one's a sort of cold hard financial decision, in that no one sector in the industry is big enough to have its own business or management magazine. You could have a fitness business magazine, a venue management magazine. The numbers of potential readers out there aren't big enough to sustain a magazine. And sport is a good sector. Over the years, a number of people have tried sport-specific publications, because sport plays a huge role in Australia and in Australian life. A significant number of people are employed in it. when you actually drill down on those numbers, there's not, because a huge proportion of people working in sport are volunteers, part-timers, under-resourced, and they probably don't have time to read magazines and the like. But that's the business side of it. But also from a philosophical point of view, the management skills involved in all aspects of facilities or programs, whether it's, one extreme is possibly a fitness club and the other extreme is a water park. They're very different in what people do when they're inside there. Mm-hmm. But the process of marketing those facilities so that people come to them, taking money off them as they come through the gate in the form of membership or ticket or annual pass or whatever it might be, ensuring they have a safe experience while they're there, secondary spend items, mm-hmm. issues related to insurance, and other products that are in there. There's a huge amount of commonality in there. In some cases, you see that borne out by businesses that have interest in several sectors in the industry. Obviously, there's programming differences very real programming differences between different types of facilities and programs. But some of the core fundamental management skills are common across the board. And that reinforces why we do draw quite a wide net, and all those subject areas that you read out at the start of the interview, those are why we draw that wide net over the sectors that we cover.
Yeah,
essentially, it's managing people's out-of-home free time if they're not shopping, eating, or driving. And with disposable income as well, people may spend on one sector and not on another, or they may, their patterns and their expenditure patterns may shift over a period of time. So it's important to actually realise what another sector's doing. Mm-hmm. If you're in one area, to actually know what fashions and what trends are taking place that may actually influence consumers' decisions in partaking in your particular facility or programme.
Definitely a wide net that you cast in terms of all them different sectors and bringing it all together. But in terms of the magazine and your online kind of readership and stuff, how's COVID impacted your work?
Well, we now work from home entirely. It's also given us a massive amount to report on. Probably double the amount of online content now compared with a year ago. Fortunately, consistent with that, online readership's gone up by about 5 times. So that's an encouragement. But there's a massive amount to cover. Again, we're trying to report things in the most positive way. We want to be looking at reopenings, initiatives to encourage reopenings and things. So there's a lot to report on. Commercially, ultimately, we rely on advertisers to support what we do. We've lost a number of advertisers. We've picked up some new ones. So we're doing well. I think we're in common with, there's a little bit of struggle and a little bit of suffering like all businesses are experiencing, but we are pretty positive about the future. The industry will bounce back. People will want to go out and be entertained and be active and participate and view, go to events and venues to view sport and concerts and things. So we are pretty positive that the industry will bounce back. It'll look very different. And we will be there to report on what is working, what is doing well, what's opening, what's thriving, and so on.
Yeah, cool. Well, it's good to hear that you'd be able to report on more things and be an advocate for the industry in terms of why exercise is important and physical activity, etc. And that leads me on to the next question around the role that the media plays in communicating the benefits of exercise. So over the 24 years in Australia and obviously back in the UK, you've been involved in journalism. But have you, looking at it from a systems point of view, have you got any examples around mass media or public education where we've had the positive, communication around exercise? So a couple that I've seen at the moment are, exercise is medicine. Another one from Sports England last week, I think, is a movement of movement, which is pretty interesting. So have you got any examples?
Well, the one that springs to mind historically in Australia, people of a certain generation know of, is the Life Be In It campaign of the 1980s, where there was this character called Norm, who was being encouraged by his family members to get out and be active. Norm became one of those things a bit like sort of Louis the Fly, as a sort of Australian cultural icon. Yeah. So certainly had a lot of penetration. into the wider population. I think in more recently than that, you've got the Girls Make Your Move campaign that started with Sport England, and it's been adopted particularly in Victoria by Vic Health. I guess those campaigns are effective and are recognised. They get a high level of recognition. Whether they get cut through to change people's behaviour in a significant way, I don't know. I guess that's where I'm a little bit cynical that if those campaigns, in fact, I'm being unfair. Certainly, Girls Make You Move has been proven to have made some significant differences in participation. So that is really welcome. Yeah. But there are, with so many media outlets, so many channels, so many competing voices out there, it's overall, I think it's very hard to say how effective those campaigns are. Recognition is great. And the UK examples with Girls Make Your Move is really encouraging. But with so many channels out there and people being able to customize the media that they consume, based on their interests and preferences and things like that, it kind of reinforces what you receive and what you consume based upon whatever tribe that you're in. Politically and things like that, beliefs, certain sets of beliefs gets reinforced by across the various media that you'll go through. So how much cut through they get, I'm kind of, I remain to be convinced as to how much cut through there is. But I think those types of campaigns are important to mount, because even if it just reaches a small number of people and changes their behaviour, that has to be encouraging. And I think that is the role of governments, to be doing those types of things, to be advocating really positive health messages, encouraging people to be active. There's other ways it can be done as well, through things like fringe benefits tax and other things such as that. But I think government messages on the importance of, for want of a better word, a wellness-based lifestyle is really important. And I do think governments, actually have a role to go beyond that, and not sort of to do the, leave it to with children. It's for parents to decide, or let the market decide sort of approaches. And I think that's not what government should be doing. But there is a fear I have as well that the overall messages of a healthy lifestyle get drowned out because of factors that work against it, in terms of work pressures, convenience, labour-saving devices, safety issues, and things such as that. And then the mass messages you get from, particularly, you think of fast food companies and things like that, who just have the budgets to be able to get their messages out wider and far more consistently.
Yeah, I agree. There's no silver bullet, but it's definitely one part of the solution. I think is the media and mass media and some positive messaging around exercise. So I agree with you there. And just touching on media, so what is for somebody that works in the industry, what is the future of media? And do you see any concepts or trends for communication?
Good one. Massive one. We've only got 25 minutes. There's, with so many channels, the current media landscape is massive, and it's ever changing, and it's confusing, and it's driven especially by social media over the last decade, and particularly in the last couple of years. It's very difficult to put your finger on it. Obviously, social media, newspapers, the 5 TV channels in a particular city, that, and radio stations as well, that still there, but is under a huge amount of pressure with declining revenues, and you hear regularly about staff cuts at some of the major media companies. But I guess it's difficult to kind of put your finger on. But while a lot of those social media channels have their developments they brought were largely positive, I think, especially the last year. But if you go back to, say, the last US election, the way in which those channels can be manipulated and to influence people. There's some people who don't necessarily believe in a sort of level playing field approach. They are pushing very partisan viewpoints. It does raise the questions of the question about what media you trust, and ultimately whether you trust media outlet, or whether the media outlet that you're consuming, whatever it may be, whether it's ultimately being bought or is owned by whatever, commercially or political or whatever influences there are. And I think it really comes down to, and I'm not sure whether this is the way we'll go, whether the whole thing will implode and we'll just be viewing paid for media and mad things on YouTube and political, people with saying political views on Facebook. But I would have thought the important thing is that you trust the media, you trust particular media outlets to deliver things. Now, one person's idea of a trusted media outlet is probably very different to another's. And I suppose bringing it back more personally, what we aim to be is a trusted media outlet, that we don't have a particular axe to grind. We're not pushing a particular political viewpoint. Not everything that is published in the magazine or on the website, I necessarily think, oh, wow, that's great, or I particularly agree with. It's not the thoughts of sort of Chairman Australasian. We report what's going on in the industry in a way that we hope is trusted by people. And I think it does come down to all media, that the future of media, I feel, unless we're going to go into a horrible sort of morass of misinformation, has to be about trust. And yeah, I can't emphasize that enough, that trust has to be the way that we go, that we have media outlets that we trust. If we want to see a monkey urinating in his mouth, well, we can go and watch that on YouTube. And the other channels as well. I mean, Facebook has become this sort of horrible place of sort of political views. LinkedIn has become a place where people just go on and boast. There have to be places where there is an impartial presentation of information from which we can benefit, that ultimately is trusted.
Yeah, I think regulation, isn't it, that we need, where it's Facebook, it's a challenging one, how it would be regulated, but it is worrying where it's going, with the examples that you've said of elections and things being influenced through Facebook, etc. I can't remember the name of it, but there's a show on Netflix at the moment which is quite frightening when you talk about the impact of social media. But back to, I suppose, chronic conditions, and we were talking about the health and wellness of Australians. If you could nudge one part of the system to improve the well-being of Australians, what would that be, Nigel?
Okay, for me it would be government. I think government have a massive responsibility to influence behaviour, and I think that should be exercised through taxation and through restrictions. I think there should be bans on the advertising of high sugar and high salt food. There taxes on poor quality foods as a deterrent to their consumption. A bit like how cigarettes were regulated through taxation, banning advertising, restricting their sale. I think that should apply to certain types of foods. If you're going to get a KFC, for example, it should be taxed to a large extent to make it almost unaffordable. There shouldn't be billboard ads for McDonald's. There shouldn't be a Hungry Jack sponsoring local kids sports awards and things like that. There should also be restrictions on how such foods are displayed in retail environments as well. I think the sheer accessibility of those sorts of poor food types has to be reduced, and the way in which they're promoted, in which to create public demand for them, has to be restricted. I know that's probably several things in one, but the one thing is government should step in and play a greater role, and not say it's for the market to decide.
It's interesting. I sometimes think there's a conflict, because I remember working for the Football Association, and I'd go around delivering football development programs, but I'd have my McDonald's jumper on because the FA was sponsored by McDonald's. But yeah, I agree with you around the taxation. It's I think that might be the way to go, and which might happen in years to come. I think we're a little bit way off that yet. And my last question, in terms of yourself, Nigel, where do you see yourself personally in the system and contributing and influencing it?
Yeah, I guess in a way we should have a sort of old-fashioned role as a publisher, is in that we don't seek to be sort of a celebrity publisher, so that the message is about us rather than the publication itself. We're actually, we like to throw around, but we are very proud that we developed what is a go-to source of information for the industry that contributes to the professionalism of the industry, and hopefully its recognition as well. That's really how we see our role and where we fit in the system, so that we provided a good, impartial, valuable, trusted source of information that anybody in the industry, whether they're in sectors as diverse as the arts or fitness or sports venues or wherever, can go to and find information that is relevant to them, curated and presented in a way that's accessible, that helps them do their jobs better. That's really where we'd see that we'd fit in, and where we hope we get recognition for.
Yeah, fantastic. It's certainly my go-to for, wanting to find out what's going on in the industry and keeping my knowledge up. And I remember I was even looking at it before I came to England, which was around 12 years ago, and seeing what's happening over in Australia. So I just want to thank you, Nigel, for all your insights and sharing your stories around your well-being and your journey. And thank you for your time today. It's been really interesting to get a perspective from the media. Is there anything else that you want to share or add?
I guess it's just a reiteration that this is a great industry to be in. It makes a huge contribution to the quality of life of Australians and New Zealanders, and with what we've launched in Asia as well, in informing people, and overall it being a great industry to be in, with some great people, who deliver fun and things that people enjoy and benefit from. So that's really my contribution, and that's why we are part of what we call the leisure industry.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing what you do and reporting on the industry, and wish you all the best for the rest of the year, and hopefully catch up with you soon, Nigel.
Yeah, no, likewise. Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and actually helping me sort of galvanise some thoughts that I wouldn't otherwise have been prompted to do. And good luck to you for the rest of the year. I hope this goes well as well.
Okay.
Take care.
Excellent. Talk to you soon.
Bye.